First of all, welcome to class. The attendance code for today is 2517. If you want to put that one in, okay? So 2517. And also, a quick update. I was catching up on your assignments. I just let it slip, and then I was several weeks behind. So I caught up to just your resume and cover letter. Those require more time, so I'm still in the process of carefully reading each one and giving you feedback. So those are not done. Everything else is graded, okay? And if you turn it in late, usually I docked you 10 points, but if you turned it in on time and showed me that you actually put in the effort, you likely got 100%. So I wasn't trying to be harsh. It's mostly that I wanted to see you did it and learned something. Yeah, this class is not easy to not do well in, right? So as long as you show up and turn in your homework, you should be fine. But if you're not doing well, um, then that means we need to revisit and figure something out. Okay. Um, Also, uh, I just remember last night when I was doing grading homework, I think somebody emailed me a couple weeks ago asking me the difference between econ and financial econ. I don't think I got back to that person. I can't find that email somehow. And so just really quick, if you're curious, economics, as you can imagine, is more general. So if you study econ, you have a broader array of choices in terms of which careers you can go into. Financial econ is kind of a sub category of economics, and it's very focused. And the program is designed to train you to work in the financial industry. So the difference is, if you, what I usually tell students is if you really enjoy finance related topics and that's what you want to do financial econ because the program we have is designed to train you very well to prepare you for the jobs in that industry. Now, if you are interested in finance, but you're not sure that is the only thing you want to commit to, then do economics because you can always pick up financial econ courses as electives and they count toward graduation for econ and you can have the same skills without locking yourself down. And you can take other classes as well to broaden your interest. Um, Now, with financial econ, that degree is pretty tightly packed in terms of um, courses, so you won't have hardly any wiggle room for other electives. But with econ, you can. So that's the difference. If you're completely sure about doing finance, go for financial econ. If you're not completely sure, then econ is probably the safer way to approach. Okay. All right. Okay. So any questions before we begin today? Okay. If not, then today we are going to talk about career and grad school planning, what you can do to prepare for both. Okay. Now, in terms of career planning, we've talked a lot lately. The last several weeks are all about that. So I'm just going to point out some uh, points that we have not specifically made. But then with grad school, we haven't talked a whole lot about it. Hopefully, if you're thinking about it, either right after graduation or down the road, then this hopefully will help you. Okay. Now, a quick overview, okay, about what we do is that in our department we did a survey a few years back, and about 85% of our graduates, after 5 years of graduation, pursued some kind of grad degree one way or the other. Just that's not because somehow your econ degree is not useful, but it's just the industry overall, okay, has moved toward valuing more and more skills obtained from a graduate education. And also, even though you can find a job with your undergrad degree, but if you want to climb the ladder, so to speak, right, you usually need to you usually need to have some kind of more advanced degree to do that. Okay. Now, to prepare for your job market, okay, some overall skills you got to keep in mind, okay, are research skills, okay, analysis skills, presentation, both oral and written. Okay, uh, last night I docked somebody some points because the assignments they turned in have misspelled words or poorly written or just a very simple, like what should be a sentence is just a one-word answer. Now that is not the kind of presentation you want to give in a professional setting, and I hold you to that standard, right? I don't want you to just fulfill this assignment for the purpose of turning in an assignment. I want you to treat it as if it's something that you would turn into your colleague or your boss or your client to look at. Okay, and then so on top of research, analysis, presentation, you have then teamwork and leadership. Okay, so your courses and your whole curriculum in the econ department are designed around helping you develop these skills. Now, I know that not everybody likes, doing teamwork or writing reports or doing presentations, but that becomes your day-to-day life once you get into a good career. Now, if you say, hey, I don't care what kind of job I get. If I'm just as happy stocking boxes at Walmart, that's a different story. But we're trying to prepare you guys for careers, right? Not just jobs. So that's why you have to have some growing pains sometimes, but it's for a good cause. Okay. Now, if you're preparing for grad school, again, this is just the overview, and then I'll get into details in a minute. Now, the common degrees our students get into, okay, are pursuing a law degree or a master's of financial econ or MBA, okay, and then very few people pursue PhDs in economics, okay. So in our class, I know a couple of you are on that track and you're preparing for that. On your Canvas in this week's folder, the first document there is a PowerPoint slide, part of a PowerPoint slide we use to present to our majors every semester. At the beginning of every semester, we had what's called a majors meeting. We invite kids to come, and then we give them pizza. Then we tell you some basic information about the major. And the attendance was not very good, and it was always the same 40 people come for the free pizza every semester. So that's why we created this class, and so everybody will go through it and get the information they need to plan better. But in that document, if you are going to grad school, especially if you want to do a PhD in economics or you're interested in checking it out, okay, we have a list of additional classes that you need to take to prepare for the PhD. Right? So you have to take a bunch of additional math classes, so all three calculus classes, and then differential equations, linear algebra, intro to analysis, which is a proof class, and then a real analysis. Okay, and then you also have to take a bunch of additional stats classes. So take a look if you're interested. Okay, and but we do have good placements for both jobs and graduate schools, and so if you are interested in grad school then and a specific one, we can talk about how you may prepare for that as you get closer. Okay. Now let's get into a little bit more details of how to prepare for your careers and then how to prepare for grad school. Okay. I don't know if you guys have all seen this video clip from President Hinckley when he came in 2002. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it. The school has it, and you will see it at your graduation because this is played at graduation every semester. But it's this short clip of President Hinckley coming to BYU, Idaho shortly after it became BYU, Idaho. And he was doing a devotional with the students, and he was giving a speech, and then he kind of threw his put his speech aside, and then just went off script for a moment, and he got really emotional. He looked at the students and he said, "I love you. I love you." And then he choked up for quite a while before he could speak again. And he said, you know, "There is no end in sight for the good you can do. Do you know it?" And he said, "You are just simple kids. You're not geniuses. I know that." Right? And then everybody was kind of laughing. But then he said, "But the work of the world isn't done by geniuses. It is done by ordinary people who have learned to work in an extraordinary way." And that's what BYU Idaho is. Right? We're trying to train you that you will shine and stand out no matter where you are, whichever setting you are, because of the skills that you might learn here. Okay. So um, again, okay, you want to figure out ways to stand out. Okay, not just during your interview, but have actual things that you can present to your potential employers to stand out. Okay, now we'll talk about the skills that employers are generally looking for, but you should start recording what makes you unique, right? So start thinking actively about what difference can I, offer compared to other people? Because, okay, you are competing not against only against just some other BYU Idaho graduates, but potentially, college graduates from all over the country, even from some other parts of the world, right? Because as the economy evolves, it becomes a more and more a global economy, and you have competition you face from all over. So it's important for you to figure out, hey, what can I offer differently than most others, right? So start thinking about it, writing it down, okay? And then also think about what important things you want potential employers to know, not just what's unique about you, but what is something that you want to make sure they understand about you, right? Might not be unique, but you need to figure it out. Okay. Now there's the second document in this week. I want you to work through it because it's a little document the Career Center has put together. About things you can evaluate. And one of the first things they put on there is to figure out how many hours per week you spend on doing meaningful things. Because, okay, employers expect you to stay busy and work hard. And you have to be able to show them that you can handle that, right? Before you find a job. You can't say, yeah, college was easy. I've been kicking around for, 4 years and just scrape by, and now I'm ready to work, right? I've been working 15 hours a week, and now I'm ready for 50. That's not going to be very convincing, right? What employers want to see is, okay, you did 4 years of college. How did you handle it, right? So ideally, okay, you have been living this busy lifestyle. So you can say, hey, I've been putting in 50 hours every week on these meaningful things that I've been doing. So, working 40 hours a week and then having a normal life is no problem. So what you want to do is you want to add up how many hours you spend on classes, only the hours in class, okay? How many hours you spend on classes, and then how much time you study, okay? Figure out accurately how much time you spend studying every week, and then how much time you spend on meaningful extracurricular activities. I'm not talking about watching TV or playing video games or just going to a movie with your friends, but rather maybe organized sports or student involvement of some kind of club or etc. Right? And then how many hours you work. Okay, so you add those up. You want the total to be about 50 to 60 hours a week. Okay, if you're not there, then you need to find ways to slowly add meaningful things to your schedule so that you can learn how to manage time. It's not about staying busy for the sake of staying busy, right? But rather learning how to time manage, how to prioritize, and how to also gain experience, okay? So that is um, what is important, and that's then gives you something you can say when you pursue a job during an interview. You can say, "Hey, I've been working hard for all these years, so I know that your company has great work ethic, and that is what I possess because I can demonstrate to you by telling you what I've been doing." And then they can see, right? You can say, "Okay, I've been taking 15 credits a semester, working 20 hours a week, and on top of that, I was the vice president of the Econ club, and I organized these activities and etc." You have actual things to talk about and experiences to share, and then from that, your employers can see, okay, now, all right, I can see that Randy does work hard, and he has good work ethic, and prioritizes his time well, and he was able to balance these things and still have a social life, obviously. So he's a pleasant person and easy to work with and all that, right? So um, and look at that form I just talked about, the second document, and if you add up your time for less than 50 hours a week, then you need to do some reevaluation, okay? Again, not to be busy just to be busy, but to actually learn how to gain those time management skills and prioritizing and etc. Okay. All right, now, how do you prepare for a career specifically at BYU Idaho, right? Because those things we just talked about are kind of general and apply no matter where you are. But at BYU Idaho, what can you do? Well, uh, here are several things that I want you to keep in mind, okay? First of all, learn or embrace the learning model. Okay? If you haven't reviewed the learning model, I want you to look at that really quick because that learning model is, first of all, is inspired, and second of all, once we came up with it at BYU Idaho, the church has taken it and applied it to everything, right? Not only the missionary training programs, but also the members trying to learn the gospel is all actually came from the BYU Idaho learning model, right? We moved away in the last decade from the every Sunday the teacher just reads from the menu. I mean, not the menu, the manual kind of style, right? That a lot of you are probably familiar with grown up. But now it's a lot more personal, engaging, and etc. So um, be familiar with it, right? So the basic three steps is prepare, teach one another, and then prove and ponder, right? So if you follow these steps in the learning model to learn, you're gonna become a great learner, which is a very useful skill for any employer. Right? So start there. And then the next thing I want you to consider is in your classes, okay, be a participant, not just an observer. Okay, so when your teacher asks for feedback, opinions, or answers to questions, don't just sit back and be quiet and think about the answer in your head. Actively participate. Okay, you are responsible for your own education. Right? I'm here to help you, but you gotta take responsibility and learn all you can. Right? So ask and answer questions, complete assignments with motivation to learn, not to just get a grade. Right? Because you're here. The grade is an evaluation of your learning, right? But learning is the ultimate goal, okay? And then another thing I want you to consider doing is to lead group projects, right? So don't become this passive participant where somebody else tells you, hey, you got to finish this by Friday, and then like you grudgingly say, okay, fine. You type up a couple of paragraphs without proofreading, send it to them, say there, right? Check the box. I participated. Don't be like that, right? Take charge, be a leader, help figure out how to move the work ahead, and help people find the best ways to work together. Because again, these group projects, and even though your faculty members know very well that you will be dealing with people who don't want to participate and who might seem lazy and who have very little interest. that is all valuable experience for you to learn how to work with people, because when you get into a job, you're not going to just have your best friends that share the same interests with you and have the same level of motivation all the time with you to work on things. You have to deal with people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different motivations, and different levels of interest. And a lot of times, you know, they might not feel the same about working on something like you. So if you lead, become a leader and figure out how to motivate people, how to work with different types of people, okay? That's a great skill to have. And then the next thing to consider is to tailor your degree, okay? If you have a good career in mind, then intentionally, okay, find classes you can take to prepare you for that, right? If you know you want to get into, data analysis, then maybe on top of your econ degree, pick up some coding classes to prepare you, right? So be intentional and tailor your degree that way, okay? And so I guess in general, just have a plan and try to be, you know, try to be motivated and take charge in everything you do. Okay, that's the general principle. And then also, while you're at BYU Idaho, you got to utilize the resources that are available to you. I think most people are either not aware of or not, they don't bother to do that, and you're missing out on a lot of things, right? So first of all, make sure you are willing to visit with your professors, okay? I know, I've been a student before. Somehow approaching a professor can seem scary, but I promise you that most professors at BYU Idaho don't bite you. Okay, we do our best to be kind and to be helpful, and actually we like it when students come and seek help. So if even if you're doing well in your classes, take the time to visit your professor outside of classes. Talk to them about their perspective on the subject matter and answer your questions. Right. So then they can also give you, career advice and, um, what the outlook for the industry is and et cetera, right? So gain more from the classes, even if you're doing well. If you're not doing well, you definitely want to visit with your teachers, right? And then make sure you take advantage of other resources like the academic discovery centers. Okay, there's one for each college. Ours is in what's that building called? It's the old dorm, one of those three old dorms that are still standing, kind of between the two entrances to the two roundabouts on campus. We're in the middle one. I'm sorry, is it Chipman or Chapman? I can't remember for sure, but it's in the middle building. Yeah, Mateus, do you know? Or,
We have the Beatles. No, I don't think it's the Beatles, but I'll think
okay.
about it.
Oh yeah, the middle is where the
Chapman Building.
uh, where's which one?
The Chapman Building,
The
right behind
Chapman.
the Smith Building.
Okay, that's right. Good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
Chapman.
so yeah. So I did remember. Chapman. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, take advantage of that. When you have a question about how to plan your classes and etc., then there are people who are there to help you. And then also, we have a bunch of what's called academic support centers all around campus. Okay, we have a tutoring center, we have a reading center, we have a writing center, we have a math study center, and we have a study skills center. Then we have an English transitional center if you're an international student, and then we have a presentation practice center. Okay, so you can see that all those skills I mentioned that you can develop, there's a center to help you. If you struggle with one of these things, you say, man, reading is tough for me, right? My professors expect me to read a chapter every day, and I just hate the textbook. And how can I read and get more out of it and not just sit here, read for 20 minutes and go, wait, what did I just read, right? Because a lot of times we read words without processing the content. Well, there are experts we've hired, and they've trained students that are good in the subject matter that can help you. Go there and take advantage of that. Okay, so and a lot of them are, a lot of these centers are in the McKay Library on the second floor. But if you want to find a specific one to make sure you know where it is, just search for it. Okay. Um, And now the next part I want to talk about is the skills, specific skills you want to develop, right? We already talked about, your research, analysis, presentation skills, and et cetera, right? But on top of your um, technical skills, you also want to develop what we call soft skills, okay? So uh, employers, are looking for these soft skills. Okay, these are things like enthusiasm and initiative, right? Whether you're willing to take initiative and you're excited about doing your work. Okay, flexibility and adaptability, right? Are you flexible, or you're just setting your way of doing things, right? Your confidence, reliability. Can they give you an assignment? Will you get it done in time, right? And hardworking, a strong work ethic, okay, time management and leadership and teamwork and etc. So these are all what we call soft skills, right? These are beyond the content you learn in your degree of econ, financial econ, or ag econ, but you have to know how to work with people, how to work, solve problems, and how to be pleasant, honestly. So when I was in grad school, okay, I got there and there was me and another guy from BYU, and then a third guy from BYU Idaho. We were the only three members of the church in my class, and the person from BYU Idaho, I don't know why or how, had a very unpleasant personality. Okay, and in fact, within 2 weeks of grad school, me and the other guy from BYU had to start explaining to the classmates that BYU and BYU Idaho are different schools, and we don't have the same kind of training like that other guy, and we're not the same. We are okay to work with. We're nice because that guy was just so unpleasant. He took great pleasure in just ticking people off, and in fact, finally, even the professors couldn't handle him anymore. And one time, one of our professors, who was not pleasant himself, finally just after he made some kind of inappropriate comment, the professor turned around, just looked at him and said, "You just don't know when to shut up, do you?" So it was very awkward and uncomfortable for the rest of us. And of course, this person did not seek help from anybody else, couldn't get help from anybody, and kind of flunked out of the PhD program. But the school was kind in a way where they gave him a master's degree to let him walk away with something. But with a master's in econ, most people have a very successful career. But this person has been bouncing from job to job till now. As far as I know, he hasn't held a job more than 6 months. And last I saw a few months ago, he got so desperate he was asking for job opportunities on Facebook, right? So in this case, he did not lack the technical skills, but his soft skills are pretty much non-existent, right? And he was so unpleasant to be around that he couldn't hold the job down. People couldn't keep him employed because he just became such a pain in the neck for everybody around him. So don't be like that person, okay? Um, it's not, yeah, it's just the soft skills can be developed, but it's a lot harder to develop once you get into a job situation, right? You want to go in as the person who's motivated, the person who can work with others, the person who's pleasant, even facing difficult situations. And if you are trying to be like that now, you can actually have a lot of examples to give during your interviews, right? Because last week we talked about a lot of times the interview, one common interview question is, tell me how you handled a difficult situation before, right? And if you can share that with your specific experience and give an example, then that's probably going to be a lot more convincing than just say, well, I'm sure I can handle it, right? So anyway, so these soft skills, make sure you think about them, okay? And so write down again, what soft skills do you have and how you can demonstrate them with past experiences, and write those down, okay? And then on top of that, then you just want to Make sure you actually do other things to prepare for your career by things like internships and part-time jobs, participating in student organizations, and community service, right? So those are valuable experience you can gain and you can share when you prepare for your job. And we will talk about internships specifically next week. But so let me just talk about the other three really quick. Jobs. You want to have, if possible, a job while you're going to school, not because necessarily you need the money, even though if you need the money, then that serves a greater purpose. But even if you're financially comfortable and secure, find something to do for the experience. Okay. Now, even if you are flipping burgers at McDonald's, if you do it well, you can learn things, right? You can learn how the business is operated. You can observe how people interact with each other, and you can learn what doesn't work in other workers, right? Maybe you'll meet somebody that has been stuck with a entry-level job for 30 years, and maybe learn from their experience and say, okay, how can I avoid that, right? So there will always be things to learn. Plus, you can fill your schedule. So if nothing else, you can say, hey, I went to school full time and I worked for these many hours a week, so I know how to handle pressure and how to manage my time well. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. Okay, but always look for the skills you can gain, and you can explain how you can demonstrate, right? So like last week, um, I can't remember who asked that. I think Daniel, you asked the question about, or was it Michael? I can't remember. Somebody said, you were interviewing, and they said, well, what didn't you like about your last job, right? And what's wrong with your last job? And if you can talk about things you've learned, then you can avoid that kind of trap by talking trash about your previous employer and still gain a good experience, make a good impression with your current one that you want to impress, right? So, so that's with jobs and student organizations. Okay, get involved. I know that sometimes students think, oh, the Econ Society is so lame, or the Investment Society is just a busy work, or whatever. But no, not so, right? If you participate, if you become part of the leadership and organize, again, you learn valuable skills and experience, but also, okay, you actively participating will send a signal to potential employers that you care about your environment and you're motivated and you can handle jobs outside of what's required of you to finish something. Okay, and you have interest. You're an interesting person, right? So think about that, and you don't have to all do econ, even though I think every econ major should be part of the econ or the financial econ societies, or if you're an ag econ, then you can think of the ag biz society, but you ought to be part of something. Then on top of that, I would encourage you to look for one that interests you, right? If you are into like aviation, go find maybe if there's not one, then maybe you can see if you can start a radio controlled model airplane club, something, right? So my brother-in-law is at BYU, and he studies mechanical engineering, and he's really into model rockets. And there's a club for model rockets, and they make model rockets, and they actually launch them in the desert of Utah, and it's super fun. And also, it really takes the skills he learns in class into practice, right? He has to design and make things that can actually launch and fly, right? And community service, right? So these nonprofit organizations that are always interested in volunteers, and also you can show that you are a good person that cares about others instead of just yourself. One thing econ majors are often accused of is being selfish, because you understand the incentives people face, and somehow we start to care less about you know other people and compared to many other majors. So don't let that become you. Okay. I hope that our students do not become selfish and somehow only cares about their own career, their own financial gains, and etc. Okay. All right. So those are some of the things about preparing for a job. I know I talk a lot today. but hopefully you find it helpful. Okay, and then now let's talk about preparing for grad school, because like I said, 85% of our graduates within 5 years end up either going to or have already completed a graduate degree of one sort or another. So this, even though you might not have plans to go to grad school right away, jog down some notes when you hear something new, and they probably will help you just down the road in a few years. Okay. So first of all, there are two types of general grad schools. One is called a professional school. Okay, a professional school is teaching you a specific skill. Okay, so these are things like MBA or law school or CPA or MPA, MD for medical doctors or DS, dental, DDS, so dentist. These are all schools that teach you a specific skill. They're called professional schools. Okay, now uh, they they usually just prepare you for a chosen profession, right? So you want to be a dentist, then you go to dental school. And you want to be an optometrist, and you go to optometrist school, and you learn how to work with eyes, right? So then the second general type of grad school is what's called a scholarly program or scholarly school, and that's when you deepen your understanding of a knowledge in a specific field and ready to research and contribute to expand that field, right? So these are things like your master's degree in a specific discipline or PhDs or EDDs, and education, doctrine of education, right? So those are schools that will help you learn deeper, and then they expect you to then expand and push the boundary of knowledge in that field. Okay, these two types of schools expect to see different things in you. Okay, your professional schools usually focus on your GPA and your test scores and your community service or shadowing a professional more than anything else. If that's the route you want to learn as much about the profession and get your feet wet as much as possible before you apply. Okay. Now, if you are thinking about a scholarly program where you get a PhD in economics, for example, then on top of your grades and test scores, they focus on your research experience, letter of recommendation from your faculty that know you well, right? Uh, so those are, have different focuses. So if you know which one you want to get into, then you ought to look specifically about that. And they all have different exams, okay? So a business school program usually asks you to take the GMAT, okay? Then most other scholarly programs, either master's or PhD, ask you to take the GRE, okay? And then if you go to law school, they have LSAT, and then if you go to medical school, they have the MCAT, and then if you go to pharmacy school, they have the PCAT, right? So these are different tests that you have to be aware of and prepare for, and these are all very intense exams. Okay, you have to prepare for months, sometimes years, for those tests in order to perform well. And they're the first hurdle you have to jump through when you want to apply for a graduate program. So, um, so keep that in mind, and what kind of tests you need to take, and then find resources of how to prepare for them, and train. So one mistake I made when I was applying for grad schools and preparing for the test was I had to take the GRE, and I did a lot of practice questions. And in economics, so the GRE has several different portions. You have writing, and then your back then when I took it, it was called verbal, which was your vocabulary and your English skills, and then logics and math. In economics, math is the most important part. They don't care if you Yeah, you have a big vocabulary, but they care about if you can solve math problems or not. I did lots of practice, and the math questions seemed fairly easy to me. But what I didn't realize was that I did not treat my practices as the real deal, and I didn't time myself. So when I got into the real test, the math was not hard, but the time limit was intense. And in fact, I did not have time to finish the very last question. I was stressed and I was going as fast as I could, but still, when I got to the last question, before I could finish calculating and choosing an answer, the timer finished and kicked me off. So, back then, the math portion, the 100% was 800 points, and I got 790. So I knew I missed that. I didn't get the last question. I was really, really, kind of ticked off at myself. But that's because I didn't practice as if it was the real test, right? So I was all happy when I was going in thinking this is going to be easy because it's not super hard math. But, well, even fairly easy math crammed into a very tight schedule can become difficult, right? So keep that in mind, okay, the kind of test you need to take. Now, also, you need to understand key resources you have with these grad school preparations, okay? So, so one thing all grad schools have in common is that they have two people that you can contact to receive information from, okay? The first one is a graduate school program director, okay? And then the second one is a graduate chair, okay? The graduate program director is a staff member of that school that handles all the records and knows all the detailed information about the degree and the requirements for you to enter into it. And when I was in grad school, that we had an office assistant whose job was to manage all the record keeping and knowing the ins and outs of the degrees and requirements. So she wasn't a professor, and that was her full-time job, just to manage all the records and documents and curriculums of the degrees that we offered. Okay, and then the graduate chair is usually a faculty member, a professor. Okay, that is in charge of all the academic affairs of graduate students, and he or she usually sits on the selection committee, and that decides who gets to be selected, who gets to be awarded financial aid of any sort. Okay, so these are the two people you should contact when you have questions. If you have questions about what you need to prepare to get into the program, you want to contact the graduate program director and say, hey, introduce yourself very politely and say, I'm really interested in your program. Okay, here's my question. I have this and this prepared. Is that sufficient? If not, what else can I do? And do you think this is a good idea, right? So that's one resource. Okay, if you have specific concerns about the academics of the program you're interested in, then you can contact the graduate chair. Okay, now who fills these roles are that's usually publicly available on each school's website. You should look for that ahead of time, and you should make contact with them at least once before you actually apply, especially with the graduate chair, the faculty member, because they're on the selection committee for graduate students. So if they already have had some kind of interaction with you, your chance of standing out will be more. Right? They can say, oh yeah, I remember this Tyler Partridge kid, right? And he contacted me about this before, seemed like a pleasant person, instead of just a name on a list of papers, right? So that's the kind of resources that's available for any kind of graduate program across the board, whether it's professional or scholarly. Okay, and then another thing that you want to really do is to find the right fit. Right, there are tons and tons of graduate schools out there. Don't just pick one because it's convenient or because it's close by or because it's cheap. Okay, find the right fit. Consider everything, right? So understand what the school is teaching and researching, okay? And ask yourself some questions like, is this what I want to do for the next 3 to 7 years of my life, right? Because a master's degree should take 2 years. Sometimes people take three. A PhD should take five, but I have, that other guy from BYU that started grad school with me. Um, he still hasn't finished. Okay, I got into grad school in 2007. Now it's 2020. So 13 years later, he still hasn't finished his PhD. I think he's like in his very last year of being able to do so. Because usually they say after you finish all your coursework, we give you 9 years to do it. At least that's a common practice I'm aware of. If you don't finish your dissertation in 9 years, then all your work is in vain and they kick you out. So I think he's in the very last year of possibly defending and finishing, right? And now he has had some trials in his life that severely impacted him in a negative way, but still he struggled even from the get-go. So not get-go, right? But anyway, so uh, you could end up spending a lot longer than you expect in a graduate program. And so ask yourself, is that what I want to do, right? Is this the place I want to be for the next several years? Okay. And also look for, information about who does things that you're interested in, and then learn more about these people and ask yourself, what does this person support things that I agree with, right? So what if I go in there and then they'll think their views are totally different than mine, and I won't get any support on what I'm interested in researching or what I'm willing to find out, right? So, or is this an area of study I want to know more about, right? This school, let's say, is really good at labor economics. Well, but is that a field you want to get into? Right? So these are all things that you want to ask yourself. Okay. Now, the way to find out more about this is to do it online and search for information, but also then look at the list of their students, okay, or through LinkedIn, do a search of that school, see if you can find any current or past students that are members of the church, then contact them and say, hey, how do you like, being at maybe University of Utah, right, or maybe University of Colorado, or University of Washington, right? Are you having a good experience there? What is the environment like, and what's the cost of living, right? What are the faculty supportive? And ask your questions, okay? And if you can't find anybody on LinkedIn or on the school's webpage, then you can also try to contact the local institute or maybe a local church leader and say, hey, do you have anybody there that's going to school that I can be put in touch with, right? So find somebody that can help you answer questions, and then and then also if don't just limit your contacts to church members. They'll give you a certain perspective, but then feel free to reach out to some faculty and some current graduate students, because like I said, all programs list their current graduate students right now, okay? And talk to them, okay? Lucas, go ahead.
Yeah, and so I hear that is not always good, like to get a master in the same school where you get your degree. Is that right? It's always better to look for another school. For example, if I graduate from BYU Idaho and I want to go a master in BYU Provo, it's not that good.
No, I mean BYU Idaho and BYU in Provo are two different schools, so I don't think that would be a great concern. You're right. In many cases, people want to see that you've been to other schools and you have a diverse background, because if you have the same training from the same people all the way through, then you probably lack the vision of what more is out there. Okay, for example, when I was in grad school, yeah, I was an exception. They offered me a job to stay after I was done at Washington State, but that was very rare, right? And most people, even if they liked Washington State University a lot, they liked the area a lot, if they wanted to get a job, they have to go and work somewhere else before they're considered to come back. And some of my professors, jokingly said, "Yeah, we don't eat our own dead, right? So you got to go somewhere else and learn something different from some other people before we'll consider for you to come back." And they do have several faculty members there that graduated from Washington State and wanted to come back, but they all went somewhere else. In most cases, got tenure somewhere else and then moved back. So that is a true statement, Lucas. You want to have a diversified background, but I wouldn't put BYU and BYU Idaho as the same school. Now, your situation is unique, right? Because I mean, by your, I don't mean Lucas alone. I mean all of you, because BYU offers quality education in many fields that are heavily discounted in cost, right? So we'll talk about cost here in just a second, but if you don't have funding offered from other programs, then it might be, the answer to your graduate education, right? Because it's affordable, and sometimes that makes it worth it. Okay. Now, so paying for grad school, okay? Graduate school is very expensive, okay? Now there are several ways you can approach to paying for it, okay? Keep in mind that most professional programs have very little funding offered to pay for you. Okay, so if you want to get a MD, become a doctor, chances are you're going to get into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Okay, that's just the reality, right? If you want to go to dental school, same odds. If you want to go to vet school, become a veterinarian, same thing, right? So those schools, because their goal is to help you prepare for a job, and usually they can place you in a job, they don't give you much funding at all. So your almost only option is to get into debt. Now, if you have parents that are really wealthy and are willing to fork several $100,000 in costs for you, then well, count your blessings, right? Because when I was in undergrad program, a friend of mine went to medical school at University of Utah. His parents paid for it all. He graduated debt-free. It's like, wow, more power for you. Even if my parents wanted to pay for it, they didn't have 300 grand in tuition money that they could have given me. They had like $3,000 they helped me when I first came here, and that was it, right? So, so that's that's a different situation, right? Now for most scholarly schools, especially in economics, usually they have options to help you pay for your schooling, especially if you pursue a PhD. Okay. Now, if you pursue a PhD in most fields, especially in econ, you should not be paying your own way through school. Okay. And if you don't get any offer from the graduate school to pay for your education, sometimes it might be worth it to wait a year and apply again. Now, the reason for that is because these scholarly schools get a lot of funding from other sources. So a lot of companies are trying to pay to get projects worked on, or the government usually has funding for things that they want to research. And so they have a lot of money to help their students. So again, if you are trying to pursue an econ PhD, oftentimes what they can offer you is they'll waive the tuition completely. And then they say if you take a job as a research assistant or as a teaching assistant, we'll give you a stipend to live off of. And most times the stipend is anywhere between $1,600 to $2,000 a month. So if you don't have children and you don't go to a school in New York City or California, right, that usually is enough for you to live off of. Now, that's another factor to consider, right? Because if you want to go to a school in Washington, D.C., and they offer you $2,000 a month, that can be barely enough to rent an apartment. So that means food and other costs have to come from your own money. You have to either work or get in debt. But if you go to rural Illinois, right, and go to Champaign, well, $2,000 will be enough for you to maybe even raise one child on, right? So you never know. I was fine until my wife and I had the first baby. Then we had to get into debt and start taking student loans out because baby is expensive. Diapers are expensive, right? So, but anyway, so if you do a master's degree, the chance for funding is less because masters, usually don't work on projects as much for as long, so they don't fund as much masters, but it's there, right? But then again, if you can finish in 2 years, the cost is less, so maybe you can afford to just take the loan out. Now, another option I've seen people do, I'm not trying to promote this, is that you can start with a PhD program and then decide you don't, that's too much for you, and then you can switch to a master's. And usually, they won't ask for their money back if they funded you and as a PhD. Now, I'm not trying to say, lie about wanting to do a PhD and then finish a master's degree, but I guess what I'm trying to say is if you start with a PhD and that's what you truly want to do, but then decide as too much and too hard, you want to just finish a master's and go to work, that's possible. Okay. But also, if you realize you need to borrow money, plan ahead and look at what resources are available to you, what are the interest rates they usually have, right? And what are the sources, whether you can get it from the government or private sources, and what are the terms? Do you have to pay it back while you're going to school, or can you defer the payment, till after? And if you defer, do they slap on the interest right now, or do they defer the interest as well, right? Those are things you want to research and be aware of so you know the true opportunity cost of you going to school and then make the best decision, okay? All right, any questions? I know I gave you a lot of information, but I recorded this. I'm going to post it on YouTube so you can watch it again. Any questions? Okay, sorry for talking your ear off. This is not the way I like it, but like I said, it's a lot of information and I wanted to make sure I get everything covered. But we're out of time, and next week we're doing internships, and then after that we will be having presentations from alumni. So yeah, just check your schedule, make sure you stay current with all the assignments, don't miss anything, and have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week, okay?
Brother Mark,